Hey guys, tonight we begin with shadows on stone, flickering fires, and the kind of deep, disorienting thought spirals that leave you wondering if your ceiling fan is actually part of a conspiracy. You're walking into the cave where truth is a puppet show and freedom is kind of a rude awakening. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle forward, barefoot, on cold stone. The air is damp, ancient. Around you, figures sit chained, staring straight ahead at a wall that flickers with shadows. These shadows are all they know. Silhouettes of pots and puppets and other figures move behind them, cast by firelight and shaped by others. You crouch beside them and realize they're trying to guess the patterns, to understand what the world means by watching the shapes dance. That's all they've ever seen. This is Plato's allegory of the cave. And you, poor soul, have just joined the world's weirdest sleepover. Plato imagined this dark cavern to explain how most people experience reality not directly, but through appearances, distorted projections, filtered perceptions. You don't see the world as it is. You see the TikTok filtered version of it. Worse, you think that filtered world is real now. Now imagine this. You break free, you turn around. The fire blinds you. You crawl out of the cave knees, scraped, ego shattered, and stumble into actual sunlight. Everything's brighter, raw, unnervingly real. This is supposed to be the truth. Philosophers call it the form of the good, but right now it mostly feels like someone turned on a giant flashlight in your face. Historical fun fact: Plato wrote this in his book The Republic. Somewhere around 380 BCE, he wanted us to question not just what we see, but how we see. A society that never examines its illusions, he thought, is like a group of people who'd fight to stay in the cave, begging not to be released. And here's your reality check. If someone dragged you out of the cave right now, if they turned on the bedroom light mid-sleep, you'd probably react the same way. Angry, confused, and maybe a little murderous. Historians still argue whether Plato's cave was purely metaphor, or if it hints at real-world educational hierarchies he observed in Athens. Some even link it to Pythagorean mystery schools, where truth was literally hidden from the uninitiated. Either way, the core idea is clear. Most people sleep through life, watching shadows and calling it reality. Now, let's get cozy with a fringe tidbit. In ancient mystery cults, like the Eleusinian rites, initiates were said to descend into darkness before seeing the light of divine knowledge. This wasn't just metaphor, it often involved literal caves, torchlit tunnels, and possibly a weird mushroom tea. So basically, Plato might have ripped off a secret cult ritual to make a point about education back in the cave. The chained watchers are debating the meaning of a new shadow. It's vaguely shaped like a llama. One argues it is a divine jammer. Another swears it's a hat rack. You realize suddenly how easily we build entire philosophies on shadows, stories, and gut instinct. This is where the thought gets sticky. Even if you do escape the cave and see the real world, what happens when you return? That's what Plato said the philosopher must do. Return to the shadows and help others see. But, surprise twist, they don't thank you. They might actually try to kill you. Kind of like that one time you tried to explain NFTs to your parents. The unsettling implication here is that people don't always want truth. Truth is harsh, bright, and it makes you question everything you've ever known. Illusions are warm, soft, and shaped like whatever makes you feel safe. The brain loves safety. It prefers a known lie to an unknown truth. And now, here you are lying down, eyes fluttering, your mind spiraling into strange places. Are your dreams just shadows on another cave wall? Is the ceiling fan real? Are your thoughts your own, or just flickers of something deeper, unseen? You shift under the blanket. Somewhere, someone in the shadows whispers a theory about reality. You try to ignore them. You want to sleep, but Plato won't let you. He's still out there, in his toga, waving his torch at your bedtime illusions. And as your thoughts blur, you wonder if the cave is your room, the chains your daily routine, and the shadows. Maybe your own expectations playing tricks on the wall. The fire flickers lower, the shadows slow, and finally, you start to wonder if maybe there is no cave at all, just layers of dreams nested like Russian dolls, pulling you further into the night. You wake up, sort of, in the quiet hum of empty space. Not a dream, exactly, just a vast black nothing with the occasional ping of something tiny colliding with something even tinier. Somewhere in this echoing darkness, a soft voice mutters, "Everything is atoms and the void." You drift toward it like a half-curious space tourist with zero sense of direction. No gravity, no center, no up or down, just atomic particles bumping into each other like clumsy introverts at a philosophy mixer. Welcome to the world, according to Democritus, the ancient Greek philosopher who first whispered into the cosmos, what if everything's just little stuff colliding forever? It's the 5th century BCE, and the man's basically inventing quantum theory with zero access to a microscope, just pure vibes and brain power. Democritus believed that all matter, yes, including your incredibly cozy blanket, is made of indivisible units called atoms, from atomos, meaning unconnectable. These atoms move through empty space, the void, combining and separating, forming everything from donkeys to donuts. You blink and find yourself floating through a blurry molecular soup. And the thought hits you, is my sleep just atoms, briefly arranging into rest? Now meet his spiritual successor, Epicurus, who looked at the same cosmic Lego blocks and thought, well, okay, but can we use this to chill out already? He wasn't here for cosmic terror or anxiety spirals. He wanted peace, pleasure, and ideally, a stress-free bedtime. Epicurus took Democritus' atoms and built a comfort philosophy out of them. No gods meddling in your dreams. No afterlife full of judgment. Just atoms and the void, rearranging until you don't exist anymore. Comforting, right? You're just a temporary clump of atoms with a name and some really weird dreams. Nothing to fear. Death is nothing, because when it happens, you're not there to feel it. And when you're here, it hasn't happened yet. That's the Epicurean bedtime mantra. Death is irrelevant. You mumble it as you adjust your pillow. If that sounds grim, well, it's not. In fact, Epicurus ran a literal garden retreat for philosophers. To eat simple food, talk feelings, and unwind. Think of it like a wellness spa, without overpriced SMOOTHIES. Mainstream history gives Epicurus a bit of a bad rep. Many confused him with a kind of hedonist, like someone who'd throw rave parties with scented oils and figs. But the truth is quieter. He valued ataraxia, a state of serene tranquility, above all else. For him, pleasure wasn't wild indulgence. It was a gentle exhale at the end of a hard day. It was a night with no nightmares, no stomachache, no existential dread. Historians still argue whether Epicurus' idea of pleasure included more social complexity. Was it communal, private, bodily, intellectual? Some say he advocated an introvert's paradise. Others argue he had more going on behind those garden walls than he let on. Either way, the philosophy boils down to this: your body is just atoms, your thoughts are atomic flickers, and if you can minimize pain and maximize peace, even a Tuesday night becomes sacred now. A quirky fact for your midnight entertainment: the Epicureans believed the gods did exist, but way off in distant, blissful realms where they were too chill to care about you. Think of them as divine influencers who never check their DMEs. Back to the void, you try to imagine your bed as a constellation of swirling particles. The mattress beneath you atoms, the warm air under the blanket atoms, even your sleep-deprived brain just buzzing atomic pulses, trying their best. And somewhere, Democritus is laughing, knowing he called it 2,500 years before particle physics. Got a whiteboard. This is your lullaby tonight. Nothing beneath your feet but endless motion. The particles of the universe swirling in silent, sleepless dance, its strange comfort. Because if everything's just atoms and void, maybe you don't need to stress about the unpaid electricity bill, or the cringy thing you said in 2009. Maybe none of it sticks. Maybe everything floats through you, rearranging without judgment. You breathe slower. There's freedom in being temporary. Even now, your breath displaces a few molecules. Your thoughts release tiny chemical signals that ripple through your body. You are, in every sense, the universe folding in on itself just to feel what it's like to rest. And when that thought gets too big, you grab the nearest philosophical pillow and hold on tight to Epicurus' most peaceful command. Do not spoil what you have by desiring what you have not. So you don't crave better dreams. You don't panic about the void. You lie there and float, one atomic cluster among billions, and for the first time in a while, that feels like enough. You sit cross-legged in a quiet courtyard, wrapped in a blanket of marble silence. The sky overhead is pale blue, but you hardly notice it. You're too focused on the voice echoing in your head, calm, stern, and profoundly unimpressed by your bedtime complaints. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. You've just checked into the Stoic school of thought, where emotions are carefully side-eyed and self-control is king. The man whispering moral clarity in your brain. That's Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor and sleep-deprived philosopher dad of the ancient world. The first thing to know about Stoicism is this: it isn't about suppressing your feelings. It's about refusing to be ruled by them. So the moment your bedsheet gets tangled, your foot twitches, and you remember something awkward from 6th grade, well, a Stoic would simply observe the moment, nod internally, and carry on with a face like they've just politely declined dessert. The Stoics Marcus, Seneca, Epictetus believed that peace comes not from controlling the world, but from mastering your response to it. They called this apatheia, not indifference but a serene clarity. Like a lake so still, it reflects the moon exactly as it is. Historical fact: Marcus Aurelius wrote Meditations, his private journal of wisdom and pep talks, while dealing with a collapsing empire, war, and possibly a stomach ulcer. The man didn't even write it to impress anyone. It was just him trying to keep himself sane. Imagine journaling by candlelight while simultaneously ruling the Roman world and still remembering to tell yourself, be tolerant with others, and strict with yourself. You shift on your pillow, wondering what a Stoic would say about your ongoing feud with your neighbor's midnight dog. Probably something annoyingly reasonable, like, the barking is not within your control, but your frustration is. Historians still argue whether Stoicism was meant for emperors or everyday folks. Was it a rich man's comfort philosophy, or truly scalable wisdom? Epictetus, after all, was born a slave and became a teacher of kings, proof that serenity isn't tied to wealth, just discipline. Now, for the quirky tidbit, some Stoics used to rehearse disasters before bed. Yes, on purpose. They'd lie there and imagine losing all their possessions, being exiled, falling sick, or even dying just to remind themselves that they'd be okay anyway. They called it premeditatio, malorum, premeditation of evils. Stoic. ASMR, if you will. It sounds bleak, but oddly enough, it works. By imagining the worst, you take its teeth away. And so, you try it. You lie still and picture the power going out, the roof leaking, your phone falling in the toilet. Somehow, none of it hits as hard anymore. You're still you, you're still here. The Stoics were obsessed with this inner citadel, the part of you that remains untouched no matter how wild the outer world gets. Your sleep doesn't depend on silence. Your peace doesn't hinge on being right. Even if everything collapses, you can still breathe deeply and say, it is what it is. You look around your room now through a Stoic lens. Nothing in here belongs to you, not really. Your lamp, temporary. Your books, borrowed. Your body, just rented meat. The only thing you ever own is your judgment, your will, your choice to say yes or no to what happens inside your head. And suddenly, it's kind of a relief. There's a minimalist beauty to Stoicism, almost like a sleep aesthetic. No clutter, no drama, just a clean, unfussy awareness that life will do what it does, and you'll do what you can. You reach for your water bottle, pause, and think, does this act serve nature's purpose? You smirk. Maybe not everything has to be that deep. Even Marcus probably sighed and scratched his nose once in a while. But the lesson lingers. You close your eyes and hear the Stoic refrain. Some things are up to us, some things are not. You whisper it into the dark like a spell. The dog barks again. You breathe and let it float past like wind across water. Because tonight, you're not chasing pleasure like an Epicurean or unraveling illusions like Plato. You're just here, in the present moment, anchored and still, and in that stillness, the mind slows. You accept what is. You loosen your grip on what isn't. You trade your worries for a quiet kind of dignity. No fanfare, no fireworks, just the clean, calm hum of reason, and sleep, when it comes, arrives like a guest you've been expecting, neither early nor late, but perfectly on time. You blink awake to find yourself balancing on the edge of certainty like a teacup on a wobbling saucer. Nothing around you feels quite real. The floor might be a mirage, your memories suspicious, your name debatable, and that dream you just had about arguing with a talking plant in your elementary school cafeteria. Honestly, it might have been the most reliable thing in your life so far. You've officially entered the skeptical zone where knowledge is suspect, truth is fuzzy, and sleep is something you assume is happening. Meet Pyrrho of Elis, the original sleep-deprived doubter from around the 4th century BCE. He didn't trust reality, and frankly, he wouldn't trust this narration either. Pyrrho believed that nothing could be known, not even whether something is knowable. He'd walk through the marketplace acting like objects didn't exist, almost getting hit by carts or walking into wells, which, to be fair, seems like a pretty intense way to commit to a bit. According to Piero, the goal of life was acknowledge it was peace. And peace comes from epische, suspension of judgment. Imagine never deciding if something is good or bad, hot or cold, real or imaginary. You just float. You stop claiming, stop concluding, and let reality wash over you like lukewarm bathwater. You lie in your bed now, pulling the blanket to your chin, and you ask, am I cold? You don't know, maybe. You suspend judgment. Is this pillow soft? Could be, could also be a dream. You stop deciding. You just feel the sensation without naming it. Skeptics didn't want to prove anything. In fact, they wanted to unprove everything. Every argument, no matter how solid, had a counter. Every truth had a flip side. Historians still argue whether Piero's radical doubt was practical philosophy or performance art. And honestly, he'd probably doubt them too. Here's a fringe tidbit for your mental fog. Some sources say Piero's followers had to physically guide him around town to prevent him from walking into traffic. Well, Greek traffic, so goats and pottery carts. Whether this is fact or ancient shade-throwing is unclear, but it does suggest a lifestyle that's not very hazard-proof. Now imagine lying next to someone like Piero at night. Did you turn off the stove? Who's to say what off means? You'd either fall asleep in existential surrender or never sleep again. Still, there's something oddly relaxing about this approach. The world loses its jagged edges when you stop trying to define everything. That embarrassing moment from earlier, maybe it was awkward, maybe not, who knows? Your entire day, possibly successful, or maybe success is a construct. Either way, you're off the hook. You start letting go of labels, of opinions, of the urge to settle on answers. You drift in a warm fog of maybe and possibly not, and it feels light. You remember a conversation from earlier. Did the person agree with you or not? It doesn't matter. You don't have to know. You release the memory like an overfilled shopping bag. Just let it drop. Piero's skepticism wasn't meant to paralyze you. It was meant to free you. The world constantly demands certainty. Do you believe this? Do you support that? Are you sure? But Piero reminds you that peace often lives in the middle ground, where the pressure to be right disappears and the tension to defend your ideas dissolves like sugar in tea. In that space, you find ataraxia, the skeptic's version of peace, not joy, not success, just a calm, unbothered, float down the lazy river of not knowing. Modern psychology would call this cognitive diffusion. Piero just called it Tuesday. You curl a little deeper into your sheets. Are they warm? Are they even real? Don't decide, just feel. Sensations exist without your opinions about them. That's the secret nobody tells you. The walls don't need your confirmation. The clock doesn't need your interpretation. The thoughts swirling in your mind, they're just echoes. Let them pass without assigning meaning. The skeptical brain doesn't argue, it watches. You try this now. Each thought is a firefly. It flickers, then fades. You don't chase, you don't label, you don't even try to catch the important ones. Maybe there are no important ones. Maybe that's the beauty of it. And just when you think you've found some solid footing, a truth you know has to be real. Something like I exist, or I want to sleep, even that slips through your fingers like mist. You smile, get it now. It's not about being right. It's not even about understanding. It's about letting go. So tonight, you give up knowing. You give up needing to know. You rest not on facts, but on the gentle hum of uncertainty. The world can keep spinning its arguments and counter-arguments. You're just going to float here a while. A single flame flickers in the darkness, and you're alone at a small wooden desk, surrounded by cold air and colder doubt. The shadows stretch long across the stone floor, and everything feels like it could vanish at any moment. You stare at your hands. Are they yours? You feel them, sure. But can you trust that sensation? What if you're dreaming? What if you're being deceived by something, someone? Here, in this quiet room of the mind, the voice that guides you is sharp, French-accented probably, and incredibly skeptical. This is the mind palace of René Descartes, and now you are Descartes. It's the 1600s. There's a fire in the hearth and paranoia in the air. You're questioning everything: your senses, your beliefs, your memories, even this room, even your own existence. That's the mood of Descartes' infamous methodic doubt. He proposed a bold bedtime game. Doubt everything until you find something you can't possibly doubt. Strip reality down to its bare logical bones. You give it a try now. Is this bed real? Possibly not. Maybe you're dreaming it. Is your body real? Could be an illusion. Is this voice in your head, my voice, even real? I could be the world's most elaborate hallucination. It all slips through your fingers like sand until, finally, you hit something solid. Cogito, ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. It's a strange comfort. You can't be sure of the world, but you can be sure that something, some you is doing the doubting. Doubt, it turns out, is proof of consciousness. If you're asking questions, then someone must be asking them. So, yes, you exist, probably, sort of. For now, historical fact, Descartes didn't stop at I think. He went on to rebuild reality, step by logical step, like assembling IKEA furniture, using only reason and zero helpful diagrams. He even argued for the existence of God, using geometry and philosophical elbow grease. Historians still argue whether Descartes truly believed he had solved the puzzle of existence, or if he was just trying to silence the infinite loop of his own intrusive thoughts. Either way, he gave birth to modern rationalism, a generation of philosophers who suddenly couldn't sleep at night without wondering if they were brains in jars. Speaking of which, here's a fringe tidbit. In the late 20th century, Descartes' legacy helped inspire a hypothesis called the evil demon thought experiment. It asks, what if a trickster being is constantly deceiving you, a perfectly fake world through your senses, every sight, sound, taste, just high-quality lies? Sounds insane, but in many ways, it's the proto-matrix. So now, as you lie there, you try to test it. You press a finger into your blanket. It feels warm. Your brain says, comfort. But what if this entire sensory package is just an illusion fed to you by some cosmic algorithm, a particularly mischievous AI? Descartes would say, suspend belief, sit in the uncertainty. The only thing that's indisputable is that you're having an experience. Everything else, unverified. You lie still, eyes closed, and become a pure point of consciousness. No body, no room, no time. Just a thinking thing, floating in a sea of untrustworthy inputs. And oddly, it's not so scary. You're not a victim of deception. You're the calm eye inside the storm, the thinker, the doubter, the one unshaken truth in a universe of maybe. Even your thoughts begin to blur and soften now. You let them come and go without judgment. There's a noise outside, you think, but the moment passes. There's an itch on your leg, but maybe not. Your phone just buzzed unless it didn't. You let it all dissolve. There's beauty in this. A strange, clean elegance in stripping the world down to its essentials. You don't need to know what's real. You just need to remember that something, somewhere, is aware. And that's enough. You are thought. You are the witness, and even if everything else is a dream, this moment is yours. So breathe in, breathe out. You are. The room is quiet now, but you sense a negotiation taking place under the blankets. Not with monsters or nightmares, but with philosophy itself. The question presses in on your half-sleeping mind like a passive-aggressive roommate. What do we owe each other? The answer, tonight, lies in a dusty meeting room filled with philosophers, parchment scrolls, and one very tired social contract. You lie on your back and drift into a historical mashup of John Locke's mild-mannered optimism and Thomas Hobbes' high-stakes anxiety spiral. These two old thinkers don't agree on much except that without rules, bedtime would be chaos. Hobbes gets the first word. He shuffles in with a scowl and an armload of worst-case scenarios. He believes that humans, left to their own devices, would create a world of endless conflict, the war of all against all. No bedtime, no toothbrush, just wild, sleepless panic. In his famous book Leviathan, 1651, Hobbes described life without government as solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Kind of like that nap you took on the floor in 8th grade. So, according to Hobbes, we need a sovereign someone or something to enforce the rules, keep the peace, and make sure you brush your teeth before bed. It's not optional. It's survival. You surrender some freedom for the safety of structure. Locke walks in behind him, looking slightly more moisturized. He's calmer, less doom. Locke thinks that humans are actually capable of reason and cooperation. His version of the social contract isn't about fear, it's about trust. He says people enter agreements to protect natural rights, like life, liberty, and yes, possibly the right to 8 uninterrupted hours of sleep. Historical fact, Locke's ideas about consent and rights heavily influenced democratic revolutions, including the American Declaration of Independence. Hobbes, meanwhile, may have inspired the stricter bedtime policies of overbearing parents worldwide. Historians still argue whether Hobbes' cynical view was a reflection of the English Civil War he lived through, or just an early example of a man who clearly hadn't had enough naps. Locke, ever the optimist, believed that when humans are respected, they behave reasonably, which, granted, assumes you haven't met any internet comment sections lately. Now, let's bring it to bed literally. You and your blanket partner have a situation. The room's too hot. The fan's too loud. One of you is hogging the covers. You both want peace, but your natural instincts and one very grabby foot are threatening anarchy. So you draft a contract, maybe not in ink, but silently, with a few sighs and compromise positions. You promise not to elbow them if they promise not to yank the sheet. Voila! That's Locke, mutual respect, shared benefits. You both keep your natural rights and your REM cycles. But when they break the deal, like, say, they suddenly turn the blanket into a burrito wrap at 3 a.m., that's when Hobbes returns. You lie there, wide-eyed, calculating your next move, like you're preparing for siege warfare. You consider a pillow-based coup, and, just like that, you feel the eternal tug-of-war between freedom and control. You want to sleep how you like, but not if it wakes everyone up. You want comfort, but comfort requires compromise. And maybe that's the secret. Peace isn't natural, it's negotiated. Here's a quirky tidbit. Hobbes' idea of the social contract extended even to silence. He thought people must agree to give up their right to interrupt, complain, or start philosophical rants after midnight. In modern terms, Hobbes would totally support do not disturb mode. You stretch, negotiating now with the creak in your shoulder. Another contract. You promise to sleep on your side if your spine stops staging protests. Your body doesn't answer, but it might be considering it, and this social contract business doesn't stop at bedtime. It's there in every small decision. The agreement to stay in your lane, to say thank you, to put the toilet seat down. It's what keeps humanity from descending into the very chaos Hobbes feared. Or, to bring it back to the blanket, civilization is just one well-timed tug away from collapse. The debate between Locke and Hobbes never ends. One says people are good. The other says people are dangerous. Both say we're stuck with each other, and we'd better figure out how to sleep in the same metaphorical bed without setting it on fire. So tonight, you think like Locke. You assume goodwill. You settle gently. You share the space, but in the back of your mind, you keep Hobbes on standby just in case someone tries to steal the last pillow. Somewhere between dreaming and duty, you sit up in your mind and find yourself inside a tidy, candlelit study. Everything here is symmetrical. A quill rests just so. The books are alphabetized by morality. Even your thoughts begin to line up. Politely, like students waiting their turn. Tonight, you've wandered into the mind of Immanuel Kant, man who could make brushing your teeth feel like a moral act of universal consequence. Born in 1724 in Kingsburg, modern-day Kaliningrad, Kant was a man of habits so precise that neighbors allegedly set their clocks by his daily walks. He believed that morality wasn't about feelings or consequences, it was about duty. Cold, unwavering, principled duty. So now, lying under your covers, you begin to sense the weight of moral law in your bones. You're not just deciding whether to sleep on your back or your side. You're facing the metaphysical implications of bedtime ethics. Kant's most famous idea, the categorical imperative, asks you to act only according to maxims you could will to become universal law. In other words, if everyone did what you're about to do, would the world still function? You pause with your phone glowing dimly beside you. If everyone doom-scrolled until 3 a.m., could society survive? Kant stares disapprovingly from the foot of your bed. You put the phone down. This is the core of deontological ethics. It's not about what feels good or what works. It's about what's right, always, without exception. You brush your teeth not because it helps you sleep or because cavities are annoying, but because a world where people don't brush their teeth is clearly unsustainable. Historical fact. Kant's critique of pure reason, 1781, reshaped Western philosophy. He claimed that we don't perceive the world directly. We filter it through categories like time, space, and causality. Basically, you're not seeing reality itself, just your brain's heavily edited version of it. Historians still argue whether Kant's system offers true freedom or just another form of ethical straitjacket. Was he carving out a space for human dignity, or just making the universe into one massive moral DMV? Let's ease up with a quirky tidbit. Kant was so committed to rational routine that he only left his hometown once in his entire life, and not even for a fun reason. It was a job interview. But here's the kicker. For all his rigid ethics and serious tone, Kant was deeply concerned with respect, not status, not usefulness, not even happiness, but the raw dignity of rational beings. He believed that every person is an end in themselves, never a mere means. So when you climb into bed and pull the blanket over your head, it's not just a ritual, it's a silent acknowledgement that your well-being matters, that you, as a thinking creature, have moral worth just by existing. You're not here to maximize output or meet expectations. You're here because sleep, like kindness, is a duty you owe yourself. But the mind wanders, as it always does. You think about little things, grabbing a snack, leaving the laundry until tomorrow, texting someone, a half-earnest excuse. Each action, Kant would say, should pass the test of universality. Would it be okay if everyone did that? You freeze. The snack suddenly feels like a moral grey area. The laundry sighs from the chair. The excuse glows on your phone. Still, the beauty of Kant's theory is that it asks you to think, to pause, to choose, not based on impulse, but intention. There's dignity in that moment when you override desire and say, no, this matters. Even your posture becomes moral. You straighten a little. You breathe slower. You imagine a world where everyone slows down, reflects, and acts with principle. And yet, there's kindness here too. Kant wasn't asking you to become a robot, he just wanted you to respect your own mind enough to use it. He wanted you to be free from manipulation, from convenience, from apathy. In Kant's world, sleep isn't just rest, it's the act of aligning with reason, of treating yourself not as a tool, but as a whole, rational being. It's self-respect with a blanket. So tonight, you lie still, eyes closed, and imagine a world shaped not by moods or trends, but by moral consistency. A world where people act not just because they want to, but because they should, and maybe, just maybe, the universe becomes a little softer when we all follow that quiet inner law. The spiral begins again. You stand at the base of a staircase that loops in impossible curves, rising and folding, ascending and doubling back. The steps creak underfoot, not from weight, but from meaning. Each one is a contradiction wrapped in logic. You move forward, but you also return. Welcome to Hegel's dialectic, where nothing stays still, and every idea wears its opposite like a secret twin. In the 19th century, Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel emerged like a sleep-deprived wizard of thought, declaring that the universe doesn't just exist, it unfolds constantly, not in straight lines, but in tension and fusion, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, again and again and again. Imagine this. You start with an idea, comfy one, like, I should go to bed early tonight. That's your thesis. But then, the antithesis kicks in. Actually, I deserve one more episode, and maybe an unnecessary snack. The tension builds, collides, and then bam. You synthesize. I'll go to bed late, but I'll feel bad about it, so it balances out. That's Hegel, baby. His dialectic wasn't just mental gymnastics, it was his theory of how all reality moves. Ideas clash, negate each other, and then merge into something new. This applies to history, politics, relationships, even your messy attempts at self-discipline. Historical fact. Hegel's masterwork, The Phenomenology of Spirit, 1807, introduced the idea that consciousness evolves through conflict and contradiction, that we don't arrive at truth through peaceful reflection, but through drama, emotional, intellectual, historical drama. Historians still argue whether Hegel's dialectic was a method or a metaphor. Did he mean for this cycle to be taken literally? The mechanism of the cosmos, or was it just an elegant way of describing the chaos of human thought? Either way, the spiral has stuck. Marx took it and flipped it. Modern thinkers still wrestle with it like a philosophical Rubik's Cube. Now, as you lie in bed, Hegel's ghost sits beside you, filing away every contradiction you've had in the last 12 hours. That healthy lunch you followed with 2 donuts. Theism. That desire to disconnect from technology while scrolling through productivity tips on your phone. Another round. The dream you had last night about flying and falling and flying again. Yep, synthesis in your subconscious. Even your dreams get processed through the dialectic machine. Quirky tidbit. Hegel believed that the world was the unfolding of absolute spirit, meaning history itself was a kind of sleepwalking, God slowly realizing it exists. Which sounds dramatic until you realize your own thoughts often follow the same path. I am tired leads to, but I'm also restless, which leads to maybe I'll listen to 3 hours of philosophy to fall asleep. And here we are, you. Close your eyes, and suddenly you're walking through one of Hegel's thought diagrams. It looks like a staircase and feels like déjà vu. Every time you reach a landing, it morphs into the next contradiction. The more you climb, the more you circle back. You realize this isn't just a mental exercise, it's your life. Your entire existence is shaped by opposites. Wanting control, but craving spontaneity. Desiring connection, but needing space. Pursuing sleep, while also resisting it. You're a contradiction wrapped in a pillow. But instead of resisting the spiral, Hegel invites you to embrace it. Don't flee from inner conflict. Lean in. The discomfort is part of growth. The friction is how the mind turns coal into diamonds, or at least into slightly wiser exhaustion. So you breathe into the contradiction. You want to sleep, but your thoughts are loud. Okay, let them dance. You want to rest, but your leg insists on twitching. All right, let it move. You want peace, but you carry unresolved feelings. Fine. Let them stay for now. The synthesis, Hegel might say, is found in accepting the opposites without needing to resolve them instantly. Sleep doesn't require stillness of thought, just requires rhythm. And contradiction, it turns out, has its own rhythm. You follow the rise and fall of tension like waves hitting a quiet shore. You remember that moment earlier when you almost cried and almost laughed at the same time. That, too, was Hegel. Life doesn't always choose sides. Sometimes it loops, and loops until you collapse, not in defeat, but in understanding. The staircase doesn't end. It just keeps going. But maybe the trick isn't to reach the top. Maybe it's to notice how much you've grown with each step. So tonight, as you turn onto your side, you carry your contradictions with you, like oddly shaped pillows. Some lumpy, some soft, all essential, and somewhere in the spiral, without even realizing it, you begin to drift. You're on a train now, not a regular train, a train of thought. It speeds past logic, curves through paradoxes, and stops for no one, not even sleep. Outside the window, the scenery shifts, buildings morph into ideas, cities collapse into doubts, and somewhere overhead, Nietzsche is probably screaming into the void with stylish cheekbones and a scowl. Welcome to the land of existentialism. No safety rails, no predetermined tracks. Just you, alone, steering your own meaning through a meaningless cosmos. At the head of this philosophical thunderstorm is Søren Kierkegaard, the 19th century Danish thinker who turned personal angst into an art form. He believed that no system, no logic, not even Hegel's grand staircase, could answer the essential question, who am I supposed to be? So, tonight, the question comes for you. Lying under your covers, scrolling your own memories, you ask, am I living authentically? Or am I just playing roles, pleasing others, blending in because it's easier than facing my actual self? Existentialism doesn't give easy answers. That's the point. It drags you into the raw, honest spaces of your soul and forces you to look around. And sometimes it's quiet there. And sometimes it's terrifying. Kierkegaard called it the sickness, unto death, that creeping despair that arises not because life hurts, but because you might never become your true self. Not because you're failing, but because you're faking. He wrote his multiple alter egos, each voicing a different view because he believed truth had to be lived, not just theorized. It wasn't about finding the truth, it was about becoming it. Historical fact, Kierkegaard once broke off his engagement to the love of his life because he felt marriage would distract him from his spiritual purpose. Historians still argue whether that was a noble sacrifice or a melodramatic overreaction, but existentialists don't really care. They admire the leap.r. Yes, the leap, Kierkegaard's most famous idea, the leap of faith, when reason fails and despair threatens to consume. You leap into belief, into love, into becoming. Not because it makes sense, because it's necessary. Then along comes Friedrich Nietzsche, the existential punk rock to Kierkegaard's moody ballad. Nietzsche didn't want leaps, he wanted dancing, laughing, screaming into the abyss until it screamed back, where Kierkegaard saw anxiety as a door to the divine. Nietzsche saw it as a door to personal power. Nietzsche's rallying cry, God is dead, but not in a rebellious teenager kind of way. He meant that traditional beliefs no longer hold sway on in their absence. We must create our own meaning, our own values, our own truths. So here you are, in bed, under a patchwork quilt of old routines and fresh crises, wondering what parts of your life are truly yours. Do you work that job because it fills you up, or because you fell into it? Do you speak your truth, or only what sounds acceptable? Are your desires even your own, or just echoes from other people's expectations? Existentialism whispers, it's okay not to know. It's okay to feel the void and not run from it. It's okay to feel absurd, quirky tidbit. Albert Camus, another existential luminary, once described life as pushing a boulder uphill forever. That was his image of the human condition, endless repetitive struggle, and yet, he smiled. He concluded that we must imagine Sisyphus happy, because even if life is absurd, even if it offers no cosmic instruction manual, we still get to choose. How we respond? That's freedom. That's the heartbeat of existentialism. And here you are, choosing to lie still, choosing to close your eyes, choosing, despite everything, to rest. Not because the universe tells you to, not because your bedtime app says so, but because you, as a conscious being, willed it. That's radical. Existentialists don't want you to conquer your fear. They want you to face it, to sit with it, to shake hands with the version of you that's terrified of being ordinary, or meaningless, or wrong, and then to smile anyway, because the train doesn't stop. Life doesn't pause for perfect clarity, but you get to decide what you'll build along the tracks. So tonight, you build quiet, you build stillness, you let the absurdity swirl and drift and make its little cosmic jokes, and you just breathe through it, not because someone said it's wise, Not because Kierkegaard or Nietzsche or Camus would approve, but because you said so. You open your eyes and find yourself suspended, not falling, not flying, just hovering above a vast chalkboard where equations, stars, and questions blur together into an endless formula. There is no edge here, no flaw, only the logic of the cosmos unfolding one syllable at a time. Welcome to the rational utopia of Spinoza, place where everything that exists is part of a single, infinite substance, and that substance is God or nature, or maybe the universe itself wearing a very wise hat. Baruch Spinoza, a 17th century Dutch philosopher with a calm face and a heart full of fire, believed that everything is connected not in a vague we're all stardust way, but in a strict mathematical sense. For him, God wasn't a bearded man with strong opinions. God was the system, the totality, the code running behind everything you've ever known, and tonight you're part of it. You shift under your blanket, a single ripple in a vast web of cause and effect. Every breath you take, every twitch in your toe, every irrational thought about whether you left the fridge open, it's all part of one seamless reality unfolding according to necessity. Spinoza's philosophy was deterministic, which means everything happens because it must, not because of divine whims or personal choice, but because of the nature of things. Fire burns because that's its essence. Wind moves because it must. You think, dream, and yawn tonight because of an infinite chain of causes stretching back to the dawn of time. Historical fact: Spinoza was excommunicated from his Jewish community for his radical ideas, especially his claim that God and nature are one and the same. His book Ethics, written geometrically, yes, literally with axioms and propositions, was so ahead of its time that most of his contemporaries either ignored it or panicked slightly. Historians still argue whether Spinoza was a pantheist god. Is the world a panentheist god includes the world, or just a wildly misunderstood rationalist who wanted people to stop treating the divine like a cosmic landlord? So what does this mean for you, here in your bed? Well, for one, your worries begin to feel softer. If everything is determined, if every event and emotion is a necessary expression of the universe's logic, then maybe that dumb thing you said in 2013 wasn't a failure, was a geometric inevitability. Your insomnia tonight, a necessary pattern in the divine web. Your scattered thoughts, just the universe expressing itself through you. And with that realization comes peace, because Spinoza didn't want to strip you of meaning. He wanted to show you where true meaning lives, not in superstition or fear, but in understanding, in aligning your emotions with knowledge, in seeing how everything fits, even if imperfectly, even if painfully. He called this feeling intellectual love of God. It's not emotional swooning, it's quiet awe, the sense that the more you understand the world, the more you love it, not because it caters to you, but because it simply is. Quirky tidbit: Spinoza supported himself by grinding lenses for microscopes and telescopes. He literally helped others see more clearly. And it feels fitting that his philosophy asks you to do the same, to peer into reality with a lens that strips away ego and reveals structure. So you lie there now, not shrinking from the vastness, but breathing in rhythm with it. The fan hums. In one corner, a car passes outside. Your heart thuds quietly like a steady metronome. Each sound, each pulse, each breath not random, but necessary. Everything fits. Everything belongs. You begin to see yourself not as a disconnected spark, but as a tiny, essential expression of the one eternal substance. You are a mode of nature, a thought of God, a vibration in the web, and because of that, there's nothing to fear, not your past, not your doubts, not even the future, because all of it, this moment, this thought, this body in this bed, is simply the universe being itself. Through you, you shift slightly, not to fix anything, but just to follow the unfolding. The blanket is a cloud, the air is a page, your breath is ink. You close your eyes not to escape, but to lean deeper into the divine geometry of sleep. No more resistance, no more anxiety about why, only what is. And what is, tonight, is soft and still and complete. You're walking through a strange marketplace, now not one of goods or groceries, but of ideas. Each stall offers a different version of truth, wrapped in competing slogans. Reality is interpretation, shouts one, no meaning without context, yells another. And floating above it all is a quiet whisper that tugs at the back of your mind. What if none of this is stable at all? Congratulations. You've stumbled into postmodernism, a realm where certainty is an illusion. Narratives are suspect, and the only constant is a raised eyebrow. You pass a cracked mirror. It reflects something, but not clearly. You can't tell if it's your face or someone else's opinion of you. That's how postmodernists like it. Postmodernism isn't a single philosophy, it's a mood, a style, a tone. It grew up in the wreckage of grand theories and utopian dreams. It's the aftermath of too many promises broken by systems that claimed to know what's best. And now it's here, in your room, quietly questioning your bedtime routine. Do you sleep because your body requires rest? Or because your culture says 8 hours is the standard? Or because your favorite wellness YouTuber mentioned the power of early risers? Postmodernism would say, maybe all three, maybe none at its core. Postmodern thought calls into question meta-narratives, the big, sweeping stories we tell to make sense of life. Science always leads to truth, democracy always leads to freedom, sleep always leads to rest. But what if none of that holds up under scrutiny? Historical fact. Jean-Francois Lyotard popularized the idea that postmodernism is defined by incredulity toward metanarratives. That doesn't mean rejecting all knowledge, it means refusing to believe there's one story that explains everything. Historians still argue whether postmodernism was a liberating insight or a dangerous descent into cynicism. Critics claim it made truth too slippery. Fans say it forced us to see the hidden power in who gets to define truth. In the first place, you pause by a dream store labeled deconstruction. Jacques Derrida leans out and offers you a word, just one, but when you look closely, it unravels. In your hand, its meaning leaks out, shaped by what came before it, what surrounds it, what it isn. Single quotes till postmodernism asks, what if our language doesn't describe reality, it creates it? What if sleep itself is just another story shaped by culture, science, economics, lighting, mattress ads, and whatever time your parents made you go to bed? Quirky tidbit. In a real-life postmodern moment, Derrida once critiqued a book about him by arguing that its attempt to explain deconstruction completely missed the point. Explaining postmodernism too clearly is, in a way, betraying it. So, lying in bed, you begin to let go of the need for a final answer. Postmodernism doesn't offer one. It shrugs at binaries like truth versus falsehood, right versus wrong, even awake versus asleep. It suggests that these are constructions useful maybe, but always up for debate. Your pillow might feel soft, but is that because of its texture, or because society taught you that memory foam is a luxury? Your insomnia might feel like failure, or maybe it's just a different rhythm one your body is humming tonight, and maybe tomorrow it will hum another. This isn't nihilism, it's play, it's the dance of meaning without a single tune. You remember something a teacher once told you, a story, a moral. Postmodernism asks, who benefits from that story? Who's left out? What truths hide in its margins? Your memories blur. You start to see how much of your identity is stitched together from borrowed threads, parents, media, school, favorite characters, slogans, hashtags. You are, in a very real way, a collage. But postmodernism would say, that's not a flaw. That's the whole art piece. You're not broken. You're postmodern. So you release the pressure to find the perfect narrative, the perfect bedtime, the perfect you. Tonight, you lie in a pile of meanings, and that's okay. You are the space between definitions, the pause in the sentence, the smudge on the map. And if meaning is fluid, then sleep can be too. It doesn't have to arrive neatly or follow a script. It can sneak in sideways through ambiguity, irony, contradiction, through the gentle realization that you don't have to understand to rest. So you close your eyes not to find clarity, but to embrace the blur. And in that blur, you begin to fade, still doubting, still smiling, still wonderfully unresolved. A door creaks open in your imagination. Not grand, not ancient, just a simple wooden door with a brass handle. Behind it, a warm, quiet room. No lectures, no manifestos, just a low table, 2 chairs, and a very calm man sipping tea. His name is Lousy, and he's here to tell you one thing. Softly, stop trying so hard. Tonight, the journey drifts into Eastern philosophy, specifically Taoism, the ancient Chinese way of flowing through life like water through rock. And as you melt into your bedsheets, Taoism melts into you. Laozi, traditionally credited with writing the Tao Te Ching over 2,500 years ago, didn't care much for complexity. He preferred the uncarved block, the simple, unforced life. The Tao, or the way, can't be described, only followed. It's not a map, not a set of rules. It's a pattern natural, mysterious, present in all things. And so, you lie here, and breathe not as a task, but as an act of alignment. You don't try to sleep. You let sleep happen. You stop chasing it. You stop bracing against wakefulness like it's a villain. You flow. Daois. Central practice is wu-waction. Through inaction, or rather, effortless action. Like a leaf falling exactly where it's meant to land, without ever trying to land. That's your goal tonight, to become that leaf. Historical fact, the Tao Te Ching, though only around 5,000 characters long, has become one of the most translated works in the world, second only to the Bible. But while the Bible commands, Laozi whispers. He prefers silence to sermons. Historians still argue whether Laozi was one man, many people, or just a poetic voice passed through generations. Fitting, since he'd likely say labels are illusions and vanish into the mist. Quirky tidbit. The original Taoist sages believed that sages could ride clouds, live in mountains, and become invisible not as superhero stunts, but as metaphors for total alignment with nature. They weren't trying to escape the world. They just wanted to stop pushing against it. So, how does this help you tonight? Well, Consider how often you force your life, trying to be better, faster, more productive. Even sleep becomes a task monitored, optimized, scheduled. But the Tao doesn't care about your metrics. It asks, can you be present instead of perfect? You turn onto your side. Your body shifts like water finding a hollow. You loosen your jaw, unclench your thoughts. You stop demanding answers from the dark. You just are. Taoism says that even not knowing what the Tao is part of the Tao. That paradox is welcomed. Confusion is a form of clarity. It's like dreaming while awake. The fan hums gently, sounding almost like a river. Your breath matches it without effort. You think of the Tao flowing through your room not as magic, not as faith, but as the natural unfolding of everything. That thought you had, it passed. That worry about tomorrow, it's downstream now. Taoism doesn't fight time. It watches it. It doesn't resist change. It flows with it. It doesn't panic over darkness. It blends into it, and now you feel that rhythm. The room around you dissolves into gentle patterns, moving, muscles unwinding, tension loosening like knots in a forgotten rope. You're not broken, you're just out of sync sometimes. But the Tao is always playing. You just have to listen. So, tonight, you become like water, not in some heroic, Bruce Lee, karate in the rain kind of way, but in the soft, quiet kind of way. The drip on a leaf, the swirl in a bowl, the breath that doesn't need reminding. No resistance, no mission, just this dot, just now. And in that stillness, the Tao carries you gently towards sleep, not with force, not with logic, but with a whisper. Don't chase, just follow. The world tilts, not violently, not rudely, just a subtle shift in gravity that tells you you've crossed into another dimension of thought. One where your bed is both a sanctuary and a battleground. Your dreams are yours, but who owns the dream of justice? You are now entering the realm of critical theory. The air smells like archives, the lighting is fluorescent, and somewhere in the corner, a small group of thinkers is huddled in quiet rebellion. Tonight's guide, Karl Marx, who doesn't particularly care that you're trying to fall asleep, has a few things to say about class, power, and whether your pillow was manufactured under fair labor practices. But before you roll your eyes, wait, Marx isn't here to start a revolution in your bedroom. He's here to shift your lens. Critical theory doesn't just ask what is, it demands. Who decided this? That thought alone crackles with midnight electricity. Marx believed that ideas don't float above life like clouds, they're rooted in material conditions. Your thoughts, values, even your sense of self, he argued, are shaped by economics. The structure of your world, who owns what, who works for whom, creates the culture you swim in. Historical fact, in the German ideology, Marx and Engels wrote that life is not determined by consciousness, but consciousness by life. Translation: your social environment doesn't reflect your beliefs, it produces them. And just as you're about to snuggle deeper into your comforter, critical theory taps you on the shoulder and whispers, who made this blanket? Who benefits from you believing that success looks like productivity and that rest must be earned? Yeah, that's the mood. Historians still argue whether Marx's vision was a necessary wake-up call or a dangerously oversimplified narrative. But for better or worse, his ideas lit the fire under entire schools of critique, inspiring thinkers like the Frankfurt School, who decided sleep itself might be political. Enter Herbert Marcuse, Theodor Adorno, and Max Horkheimer scholars, who wondered whether even leisure had been co-opted by capitalism. The idea that the modern world distracts and pacifies us with shallow pleasures while deeper needs go unmet. You're not watching that comfort show because it truly fulfills you. You're watching it because society taught you that rest must look like consumption. A quirky tidbit. Adorno once tried to explain why people voluntarily listen to music they don't even like. His theory: we're trained to find comfort in predictability, even if it numbs us. And so here you are. Your body craves rest, but your brain is flooded with stimuli, scrolling feeds, algorithmic suggestions, ambient dread. Your bedtime ritual bot. Sold, streamed might not be yours at all. Critical theory wants you to notice, not to ruin the moment, not to guilt-trip your need for softness, but to ask, is this freedom, or is this sedation? You take a breath, you lie still. You wonder how much of your life is truly chosen and how much is inherited from systems too vast to seed out. But there's hope in this awareness. You begin to trace the outlines of what could be. A world where sleep isn't rationed, where rest isn't shameful, where justice doesn't end at the factory floor but extends to your bedroom, your brain, your breath. Maybe tonight's act of rebellion is simply refusing to perform. You don't monetize this moment. You don't optimize your REM cycle. You don't journal for growth or dream for inspiration. You just rest because you exist, because you're human, because in a world that demands constant motion, stillness is resistance. That's the secret. Power of critical theory. It doesn't just point out the cracks. It dares you to imagine what could grow in the broken spaces. So tonight, you dream not just for yourself, but for the world that made you. You let go not because you're exhausted, but because you deserve to. And in that quiet act, the system loosens, just a little. The walls dissolve now, not into chaos, not into noise, but into possibility. Everything becomes fog and doorway. One thought leads to another, not in lines, but in overlapping ripples. You're not stuck anymore. You're in process, and the voice guiding you. It's soft, curious, a little mystical. It asks not what you know, but how you're knowing. Welcome to feminist epistemology, where logic and reason meet care and context, where who you are matters in what you see. Tonight's guide is a chorus. Bell Hooks, Donna Haraway, Sandra Harding, and 100 other thinkers who step into the story and refuse to vanish. Because that's the first truth. Feminist philosophy insists upon there is no view from nowhere. Every idea is shaped by its speaker. Every fact is born from a body, and every body walks through the world with a different kind of knowing. So here you are, lying in your bed, swaddled in perspective, your childhood, your language, your fears. Your rituals, they don't distort the truth. They are part of it. Historical fact, feminist epistemology, emerged as a response to traditional philosophy's claim to objectivity. Thinkers like Haraway argued that situated knowledge, truths, rooted in specific experiences, not a flaw but a strength. And that's the shift. Instead of pretending to speak for everyone, you begin by owning your point of view, from where you lie, under your blanket, next to your lamp, in your corner of the world. This is what it feels like to be alive tonight. You're not trying to escape bias. You're trying to understand it. Historians still argue whether feminist epistemology rewrites the rules of knowing or just expands them. But one thing is clear. It's no longer possible to separate knowledge from power. Who gets to ask the questions? Who gets to define the answers? Who gets listened to in the middle of the night? You breathe a little slower now, because you realize rest is not neutral. There are those who are punished for resting, those whose labor is invisibilized, those whose bodies are seen as tools instead of homes. Feminist theory doesn't shy away from that pan, it names it, and then it asks, what if we built something better? Quirky tidbit: bell hooks wrote entire books in lowercase letters, not as a typo, but as a conscious rejection of ego and hierarchy. In authorship, her work invites not domination, but dialogue, and that's what's happening now. A quiet conversation between you and the night, a checking in, a noticing. Feminist philosophy says, don't just think, feel, don't just analyze. Listen, so you listen. To the way the sheets rustle, to the memory of a friend's voice, to the lingering tension in your shoulders from carrying too much, too long. You begin to realize that knowledge doesn't always arrive through logic. Sometimes it arrives through presence, through silence, through the courage to rest in ambiguity. Feminist ethics often emphasize care not just as a task, but as a way of being, an ethic that values interdependence over individual triumph. Moral logic rooted in empathy, context, and the real needs of real people, and that includes you. So tonight, you care for yourself the way you'd care for someone you love. Not efficiently, not perfectly, just honestly. You don't push away your tiredness, you cradle it. You don't solve your thoughts, you soften around them. You don't earn this rest, you inhabit it. Feminist philosophy doesn't ask you to abandon reason. It asks you to expand it, to make room for feelings, flesh, and all the messy truths that don't fit neatly into categories. So here you are, whole, complicated, unresolved, and deeply worthy of sleep. Let your thoughts blur now. Let your intellect pause. Let your body take the lead. And in that act, you've already done something radical. You've listened to yourself. The room is so still now, it almost disappears. No thoughts race, no logic spins, just the soft trace of breath against the dark. This is where the trail ends, not in answers, but in awareness, not in certainty, but in presence. Tonight, you reach the quiet core of all this wandering, consciousness itself. You're no longer visiting grand theories or wrestling with dusty dialectics. You're simply watching the watcher, the one inside you, the you beneath the you. This final step brings you two philosophies of mind, both ancient and modern, that wonder, what is awareness? What is this feeling of being you, lying here, hearing these words, fading into something dream-shaped? You float gently through the insights of phenomenology, Buddhism, and the strange edge of neuroscience where the line between perception and reality begins to shimmer. Edmund Husserl, the father of phenomenology, once said, to the things themselves. He believed that everything we know comes through our experience of it, not through ideas floating in a vacuum, but through what shows up in our consciousness. And so tonight, you experience a pillow, a cool spot on the sheet, a stray thought, a flicker of regret, a flash of gratitude. Phenomenology doesn't want to explain these things. It wants you to notice them. Historical fact. In the early 20th century, Husserl's student Martin Heidegger expanded this view into the idea of being in the world. The claim that consciousness isn't something separate from the world, it's entangled in it. You don't observe the world from afar, you live it. Historians still argue whether this view leads to deep connection or abstract confusion. But when you're in bed, feeling every part of yourself gently settle into place, you begin to understand being here is the only thing that's ever really happened. Meanwhile, Buddhist philosophers centuries older had already explored this terrain with a lantern instead of a microscope. The Buddha taught that the self is an illusion, a bundle of habits, memories, and perceptions that cling together like raindrops on glass. And here, now, you feel a truer sense of self becoming porous. Your thoughts aren't you. They're just clouds passing across the night sky of your awareness. You watch them without grabbing, you breathe without controlling, you drift without trying. Quirky tidbit. Zen monks sometimes meditate by simply observing their own thoughts arise and fall like waves, no judgment, no effort, just patient attention. Some call it just sitting, and it turns out just lying down might be equally profound. There's no need to name this moment, no need to label it peace or clarity or philosophy. It just is, and so are you. Even neuroscience agrees. Much of what we think of as you is just patterns of activation, neurons firing, habits repeating, stories rehearsing themselves in loops. But underneath it all is something simpler, awareness, itself, unstoppable, quiet, gentle. That awareness is what's hearing these words now. That awareness is what's watching the edges of sleep. Creep in, you're not behind your thoughts. You're beneath them. You're the stillness. They emerge from mind. Return to dot. So let the theories settle now. Let the systems, the names, the arguments, all slide softly to the side. Let the you behind the curtain simply be. Because at the heart of all philosophy is one ancient question that was never meant to be solved and lived. What is this? And tonight, this is stillness. This is softness. This is home. The room is barely there now. Just the outline of a pillow, the whisper of a breath, the long exhale of the day folding itself shut. Your body is heavier, but in a comforting wail like a book that's finally closed. Not because the story ended, but because you're allowed to rest between chapters. No more ideas to chase, no more words to untangle, no more proving, becoming, adjusting, explaining, just being. Everything you've wandered through, tonight the theories, the contradictions, the strange little quirks of humanity, they've all been part of something bigger. Not a final truth, but a texture, a rhythm, a kind of music that hums beneath all your thoughts. And you're part of that music, even now, as sleep pulls gently at your limbs. You're not letting go, you're falling into place, like a stone settling into a riverbed, like a note finishing its echo. You don't need to understand everything. You don't need to be everything. You only need to rest. Let the blankets hold you the way language has all night. Let the dark be soft, not empty. Let yourself be small and free and whole. Tomorrow will come, but not yet. Tonight there is no philosophy, only breath, only quiet, only you.